Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you all for coming to the last event of Bits and Bio, the Philadelphia chapter of the year. Um, this has been a great year, miraculously, with a lot of participation, a lot of events, and a lot of opportunities for us to go forward in 2026. If you don't know me, that's fine, but I will introduce myself. I'm AJ Adejare. I am the city captain and technically now one of the city captains as a co-captain for the Philadelphia Bits and Bio chapter. Uh, so what is Bits and Bio? Well, in short, it's the organization where software meets the bioeconomy. So, founded in 2022, it has been the leading US-based nonprofit organization dedicated advocating the bioeconomy with software. The link is there for Bits and Bio, and I wanted to show this picture. This is a picture of Philly Tech Week 2025, one of our events that we were able to be there. The reason is because we've been doing this for the past, I would say, 2 years so far, and we really want to expand. We really want to allow people in Philadelphia and in the Delaware Valley region, that includes, the suburbs of Philadelphia, Delaware, and New Jersey, to come and organize, learn, collaborate, find yourself focused in the biotech area, AI and bio, just leveraging technology in the biosphere, ranging from small moleculars and bioinformatics all the way all up to scaling with pets and humans to allow us to be able to really use that software to advance not only biology, but the life sciences in general. So, with that being said, there have been a lot of chapters in Bits and Bio. One of which I will do a shout out for is San Francisco. If you're going to JP Morgan annual conference, it is a major conference for biotechnology and the health industry. It starts in January. If you are going there, you can meet some of the people there, including some of the city captains and even some of the founders and bigwigs of the organization in whole. So that's one. There have been other organizations in other areas, including Boston, which I'm biased since we're Philadelphia, but that's fine. And then New York, of course, San Diego, and etc. And so we've not only made it national, but also international. And there have been a lot of opportunities to improve your knowledge throughout the organization. They've had a newsletter, they have podcasts, we have a lot of different work. If you need more information, I'll be putting it in the chat. And I will personally say, um, if you put your name and don't mind it, we send out newsletters for Philadelphia on a cadence of every week for 3 weeks out of the month, usually to update people about our happy hours, but also other events. Um, you have probably, if you've gotten it, you've got an email from me. I will tell you to stay tuned because in the beginning of the year, that email may and hopefully will change to make sure that you actually have a person that is, or rather, us as a chapter sending you information. So, enough about me talking. This isn't about me. This is actually about Sunny. And we want to present Supercharged Drug Discovery. Sunny is a founding PMM at HPC AI at Forvus. He has had lots of experience in this area of the drug development and leveraging HPC for advancement, including AI. I'm going to let him take over for this event and get started. So thank you very much. Sunny, you're on mute. And there we go.
Hey Jay, can you hear me well?
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you so much. And I'll just share my slides and let me know if you're able to see that. So now my slides should be on screen. Are you able to see that?
We are.
Great. So thank you so much. And I've had a chance to attend a few meetups in Austin with Bits and Bio, and I've been like actively looking into the Slack groups. It's pretty active, so kudos to the team who's managing this group. There's like it brings the community together. And what I want to talk to you about is what we are doing as a Forvus and my background in this space. So to give you a context, right, I've been into the technology space. I'm a trained computer engineer, and then I happened to do my business degree from University of Texas at Austin. And what I noticed in this period is that life science would turn into life engineering. And when I say that, I would elaborate a lot more in the sense that at this point of time, a lot of work happens at the wet labs. So it starts from the wet labs in terms of like drug discovery and whatever we are trying to solve for. But computational biology or computational chemistry is coming at the forefront. So there's a computational way of figuring out the right experiments to carry out and accelerate the DMTS cycles. So when we looked into this, what we figured out is that it is complex to run. So we call ourselves as the world's first AI-enabled serverless HPC platform, and I would elaborate what that typically means for a domain expert specifically. So that's what we are building. So the founder of the company has been the professor of computer science at Arizona State University. He was running one of the HPC labs, and that's where he saw the problem. And then he decided to solve this problem by building this software layer, which would enable the domain experts to run their experiments and get the compute that they need in a cost-effective or a time-optimal manner. So the balance is around time and cost optimality. And we can keep it pretty open in the sense that if you want to ask any specific questions, I would be happy to answer it. We can make it really interactive. It would take about like 15 minutes for me, 15 to 20 minutes for me to walk you through the background. I would share certain benchmarking studies on AlphaFold, Bolts, OpenMM, GrowMax, Nextflow, some of the used tools by the domain experts in this space, and I'll be happy to walk you through that. So, so first and foremost, right? So we all understand like a lot of startups are getting built in this space. Even the big pharma is running a lot of computational experiments in this space. And what we've understood is that the need for compute is 20x more for a computational biologist as compared to any other persona. So this is kind of a backdrop on how much compute is required by computational team members in the biotech, biopharma space, and they don't get enough compute. There's not enough compute available for them in a way that they can deploy high performance computing setups in their own data centers. So they need something more from there. How they can solve it is through cloud. So there are a lot of cloud providers who get priority access to all the GPUs, the compute power, and they have the scale built in. And when someone runs that on cloud, the total cost of ownership is lesser because they get the priority access to a lot of latest technologies. They have the infrastructure available for you to carry out the experiments. And when for example, for a GPU, right, with every new generation of a GPU, the new generation is order of magnitude better. And that typically happens in 15 months to 2 years time frame. For any company to buy that and use that for every single minute and get the total ROI of it, that is not really possible. HPC is more of a cyclical need that a company would have. And the other part is that with a hyperscaler, something like AWS, GCP, or Azure, there's high amount of elasticity that is available. So that is another aspect. So getting all these things built into their own setup, it's not feasible for most companies, possibly a few, but you can count them on fingers who can really get this kind of setup in their environment, but mostly they can't. So that's why cloud becomes an obvious choice to find this compute. But now, even if cloud is the obvious choice, what are the challenges? So there are typically three challenges that I know of, and this is what our customers talk about. One, getting into cloud is really complex in terms of understanding the interfaces, cloud formation, or whatever that tools that they have to engage with that. The other part is even if you get into cloud, there's so much of compute available there, and there's so many permutation and combinations. How do you figure out and how do you stay optimized for your runs? And then once you optimize it, even if you take an external expertise to optimize it, how do you sustain the optimality, which can be either on time or it can be on cost? So generally, businesses or computational research teams focus on either getting something done on the lowest possible time or getting the best run time, or they want to get in the at the lowest possible cost. Those are the kind of business decisions that are made. Now, we have looked into this, and these are the challenges that I want to elaborate. Say, for example, you go to AWS and you'll have to learn cloud formation, understand AWS CLI, Terraform, Ansible, and a lot of other things that they have in terms of storage, memory, IOPS, and the instances that are available. So it is really complex to get the cloud engineering skill that you need to run, to like ensure that your workloads run in production pretty well and optimally. The other part is that with all these cloud providers, for example, just for AWS, right, there are 750 different instance type, which is like a kind of a virtual machine that you can get or a compute resource that you can get, which they call it EC2s generally. The other aspects of this is that you need to optimize on storage, you have to look at memory, you also have to look at networking on those aspects. And then with all these things, right? So it cannot be a static approach. It has to be a dynamic approach. The other part is that once you even optimize on certain resources for the workload that you have, these providers will continue to release new instant types, new technologies that will be released on a monthly, weekly basis. So how do you sustain your optimality? So considering these three big challenges, what we have built is this. So this, what you see in the center is what Forvus does. Now, as a domain expert, you just have to write one line of code, a single line of code that you have to write, and we'll take over your computational task. So either you can have a Nextflow pipeline or any containerized workload, which can be AlphaFold inference or Bolt or a molecular dynamic simulations with GROMACS. You provide that and write one single line of code, and we'll take over everything. We'll deliver you the time and cost optimality. At the back end, we have AWS as our partner, and we are part of the global startup program with them. So the way that we solve that is we have something called benchmarking and a data-driven approach with our own AI model. What we do is we benchmark every single resource that is available with AWS against the workload that you have. We have micro benchmarking and a detailed benchmarking. So we do that, and then we ensure that time and cost optimality is maintained. And I'll show you how we are able to deliver about the same workload that if you decide to run with any cloud provider, if you run that workload with Forvus, you'll pay 85% lesser. So imagine you'll run that in 15% of the cost. So 85% lesser cost. And not just that, it'll be 5x faster. So you'll get 5x better runtime and 85% lesser cost for the same workload if you do it directly in a manner that people generally do. And I'll walk you through some of these use cases. So first aspect that I spoke about is that we have made it really easy. So there's no cloud engineering required from your side. You just write one line of code and we'll take over everything. And let me just like show you this interface, right? So typically you just have to manage this toggle button. So whether you want to get something in the shortest possible time, the fastest runtime, or the lowest possible cost. So you can just play around with this toggle, submit your workload to us, and we'll take over everything. And that's it. That is what you need in terms of running your computational workload. There's nothing else that you need to do in terms of understanding Ansible, Terraform, orchestration, AWS batch, cluster, whatever those tools are. You don't need to do that. You don't even have to figure out what VM to use, how long should you use it for, and how do you manage this. So we have abstracted that entire layer with our four interfaces, which is command line interface or the GUI and other two that we have. If you're running a Nextflow pipeline, you just have to change the executor to Forvus, and we take over your Nextflow pipeline. So that's how we do it. So now, how do we really optimize? So what we do is something called a benchmarking. So we benchmark the workload against every possible compute resource that is available. And based on that, we come up to an optimal trade-off, which is either on time and cost. And that's a decision that you take. So we ensure that among all the possible compute that is available, where would your workload run most optimally, either time or cost? Your decision, and we'll execute that. So this is the benchmarking side of it. So that's first step. The other step that we have is that we auto-determine this strategy consistently. So if there's a new resource being released in any which way, we'll continue to run that benchmarking on those newly released resources and continue to ensure that your workload runs in the most cost-effective or time-effective manner. So we'll keep you on the optimal trade-off. One of the very interesting areas is that what we can really do is to reduce runtime. With Forvus, you can run and divide your workload. So for example, if there's an AlphaFold pipeline, right, there are various steps if they are in serial steps. Or if there's a batch workload, but there's a certain amount of parallelization that you need for certain steps. So instead of being stuck on one zone, say US East or US West or whatever zone that you have, you can run your computations across the world. So if AWS has like hundreds of regions in the world, we can divide that task across various regions in the world and bring those results together. So that's what we can do with Forvus. So that is one of the reasons why you are able to run your workloads in a much faster time with Forvus. The other aspect is there's something called spot instances. I'm sure you might know what spot instances are. Otherwise, I can quickly explain. So spot instances are generally instances released by hyperscalers at a steep discount, but they don't give a commitment on how long would they be available for. So if a potential customer or customer decides to pay higher, they'll take the spot instance away from you. So what we have done is, because spot instances are available at a much lower cost, and we have taken a probabilistic approach. So we monitor the availability of spot instances across the world and ensure that based on the stage of your run, we can figure out if your run would get completed with this spot instance or not. You would also understand the cost of error for an AI training or inference is really high. So if you have to, for any reason, if your run stops, then you have to generally start from the very beginning. So that is why we have to take this approach and understand and monitor it in a very data-driven manner, that with a spot instance, would you be able to complete this part of the run or not? And all these things are not manually possible. These are like automated by engines in the AI model that we have created. Now, as I spoke to you earlier, right? So it's not a very static approach. Every now and then there'll be new technologies, new combinations that will be available. We'll continue to benchmark those and deliver on that time and cost optimality to get you the optimal strategy and stay on that optimal path ever. Right. And all this is happening in an automated manner. There's no manual effort that anyone has to do in terms of monitoring or managing. Everything is being automated here by our engine. Now, what I want to give you is like, one is understanding the product part, right? So, like theoretically, we have shared many things like what we can do and what are the IPs that we have built. But fundamentally, what is happening, what you need to look at is the business outcomes that we are able to deliver. So one of the first customers that we started off is Komatsu, which is world's second largest industrial automation company. And they run 100% of their high performance computing workloads with us now. A couple of other examples that I have is, for example, ChemSpace, which is based out of the area that you might be joining from. So they're a CRO. When they decide to run their workloads, they had a timeline. They were spending like 4 weeks and about $5,500 for every run. And because it was very expensive, they decided not to continue. So they were running GROMACS molecular dynamic simulation. So this is a typical cost that they were having. When they did the same thing with us, they were able to get the same thing done in 6 hours and $750, which is like 85% lower cost. And the time is like 112 times faster. So imagine 4 weeks to 6 hours. And from $5,500 to $750. That's like the immense amount of saving that they could get with Forvus. The other example is that it's a very famous Series B company. They're coming out of stealth in the next quarter. So they had a similar challenge. So they were running they for their iteration, they were spending like 24 days and they were spending about 20K on every iteration. And we brought it down to like 6 days, from 24 days to 6 days, and they're spending $3,750 now. So imagine the same amount of like equivalent amount of savings and time that they're able to save with Forvus by this automation. And very interestingly, we recently integrated Nextflow. So if you have a Nextflow pipeline, so if someone is running a Nextflow pipeline on, say, AWS, for every wall time, they're spending about $97. But if they run that with Forvus, they can do that in $15 now. So that's a kind of a benefit that you can get. So Nextflow is one of the recent integrations, and we're hearing great things about how we are able to help our end users to save time and cost both. These are some of the benchmarking results. So typically, if you're running any GPU accelerated workload, and in this case, this is OpenMM, what we end up doing is publishing these benchmarking studies where if you run OpenMM with Forvus, what is the nanoseconds per day of simulation that you can get and how many dollars per microsecond you would pay. So these are typically the numbers that our end users really like because this puts everything in perspective for them on if they decide to do this, what would it cost them? And typically these costs, as I shared with you, is about 80-85% lesser than what they're already spending. And similarly, we have that for AlphaFold 3, where they can look at the time per fold in terms of minutes or cost per fold in terms of like dollars. And typically, what would they end up saving on time and cost if they run it on Forvus? And this is for Boltz 1. I would be happy to answer any specific questions that you might have in this area. And this is what I had to show in terms of the presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Um, I'm going to open the floor for everybody to ask questions, but before we do, one question that I mean, besides knowing if you would like to drop us the name of that stealth company that, is trying to come out of stealth, my question is actually about the spot instance.
Mhm.
So let's say you're a company, right? And you are willing to do trade-offs between, cost and power and time. Like you had like this nice scale that said, okay, this is on one end cost, is the other one scale, time. Um, does that spot instance factor into that, or is it just regular usage that would just be like on the normal standard Forvus infrastructure?
Great. I think both are great questions, right? Let me take it one by one. So first, for the biotech and stealth, I don't want to steal their like show. They would come out and it's a pretty big one, and I don't have the authority to disclose who that
That's
is.
fair.
That's on them. Hopefully, like it'll be in it'll be in every media channel and everything. Everyone will be talking about it. The other thing that you said, right, spot instances. So typically what happens is I gave you a kind of a generalist overview of the product, right? So there are a lot of guardrails around it. So for example, any workload that you have, it might have checkpointing capabilities which are natively built in, or it might not have the checkpointing capabilities natively built in. So if some tool has a checkpoint ability, that means that if there's an interruption, we can start from that point again if there's a checkpoint built in. In that case, spot instance can be built into the run that you're trying to do. In other cases, when the checkpoint capability is not there, it will not be incorporated. So that's one, which is an automated decision that we end up taking. The other aspect is the end customer or end user might have certain guardrails around how they want to run their compute. For example, they might have a guardrail that do not want to run this outside of the US. Or if there's a company in Japan, they want to keep it in Japan only. So there are a lot of guardrails that end users might end up deciding. Generally, when the company gets bigger, or depending on what stage and what work they're doing, they might have certain guardrails around it. So we have all these possibilities where they can set it up, and then we can run the automation for them. So when I refer to about 80% of the cost saving, that's a kind of a generalized use case. The savings can be a lot more as well.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I just wanted to follow up and something that very much shocked me. This also could be regionalized between different countries and different instances based upon the requirements.
Mhm.
Can you give me an
Yes.
example? Like I think you mentioned it, but can you give me like a good example of when a customer needed to do that and how it was tackled?
Right. So typically, right, so depending on, so if there's a compliance, right, that's generally decided by the risk and governance team. And typically, all the big pharma companies have certain risk and governance teams. So we do not, like for us, we do not need to know a reason on why that is the use case for them, but it can be related to what stage that they're in, what country that they have authorities on, and it is their internal data that they're putting on. So if, say, if the same company has operations in US and say Germany, they might have a compliance to run their workloads and computational workloads in Germany only. So that local team would not want the compute to be outside the Germany. And there can be various business and security reasons for them to do it.
Awesome. So, if anybody has questions, raise your hand so I could be able to get you off of mute.
Hey Jay, I have a question. So I don't know how to raise my hands. Is it okay if
Oh,
I ask?
okay, okay. I didn't know if I blocked mute. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hey Sunny, thanks. Good presentation. Some of the very good key points. When I saw this advertisement, I was just like, this is super for the drug discovery segment. So my question is specifically not about the presentations, but um, I think it's two-part questions. Number one, it seems like you work with some of the pharma companies. If you can tell me a little bit in what are the therapeutic areas and etc. that they're working this, if you have any use cases, whatever you can share. And secondly, like how are they taking it ahead in sort of in their drug discovery continuum? So it's a two-part questions, whatever you're able to share.
Right. Absolutely. It's a great question. And there are a couple of things that I could share, right? So um, let me start by a fact that every biotech, every big pharma now has a computational team, right? So there's a science, wet labs, and then there's computational team. So instead of starting from the wet labs, most of the companies are pivoting towards starting from the computational side of figuring out certain like ways that they can find the proteins to bind or single cell biology. There's a lot of focus there. So depending on the focus areas for them, every research team has been touched by the transition that is happening from life science to life engineering. So when it happens, right, what I do not mean to say is that science would go away. Science would stay. It's just that science would not be the starting point. The computational side of things would be the starting point. So where I see this, like small molecule discovery, there's a lot of use cases around. People who are doing work around peptides, they use compute a lot. And it's generally like mid-sized pharma and startups, they're pretty fast in adopting all this. So they're adopting in a lot of areas that they work on, depending on what industry they are in. Another aspect we noticed that a lot of like mid-sized and large pharma companies rely on the CROs, and CROs have to do everything in a very cost-effective manner. For them, cost is a big challenge on how they help in discovery in terms of virtual docking, screening, so that's where we see a lot of adoption by CROs because for them, cost is a significant factor. For other pharma and biotech companies, they want to do it and they want scalability. So they want to do something in the shortest possible time. So I remember like I was talking to this biotech company, they said that we can still pay for like GPUs and compute, but how do we get more scientists, like more trained scientists to work on what we are doing? So for them, human resource is a big challenge, finding the experts rather than paying money for compute. So they wanted to do everything in the fastest possible time to save on the time of their scientists so that they don't wait in queues to get some results. Now, this is one aspect. Now, you had another question, right, which was the second part. Could you repeat that, please, for me?
So in the specific drug, I think you kind of answered my entire questions, but I was kind of curious in the entire drug discovery continuum. How do you see that pharma is using your solution? And if you're able to take any of the names of the pharma, if you can't, that's fine too.
Absolutely. I can share some of the names where we have published the case studies. So a couple of case studies include like Xenon Pharma, which is a publicly listed company. They're using us. Uh, like at least five of the big pharma companies are running our solution in either the R&D or test setup, and hopefully we'll have the case studies out soon as well on those. In terms of startups, there's Molecube who's using us. ChemSpace is a CRO who's using us. Endevica Bio is another one who's using us.
Sounds great. Thank you. I probably have one more questions, but I'll save that for later. Thank you so much. That's great.
Awesome. Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, yeah, Katie.
So I actually have nothing to do with what you're talking about, Sunny. I'm always here for the vibes, as AJ will confirm when we meet in person. I just have to say, I loved your presentation. Even though I'm not in this space, I really wasn't lost. It was well thought out. It was very interactive. And I really appreciate your enthusiasm on what you spoke about. I just had to give you kudos for that, Mr. Sunny.
Appreciate it, Katie. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Uh, Iman, you can go with your question, and then I might have one more thing, and then we'll wrap up from there.
Oh, essentially nothing, Sunny, when you started talking about that every pharma is starting with the computational data, not really with the wet lab. I just wanted to pick your brain on, in your experience, I'm pretty sure that you have had enough conversations. What do you think about build versus buy and how the pharma is going about it?
Right. Um, Again, right, it's a tough one in the sense that who you are talking to. So in my experience, and not just like referring to pharma, I started my career in cloud in 2010. So that is when the transition from on-premise to cloud was happening. And people like there's a lot of fact versus fog when any transition is happening. So the crux here is that there'll always be innovators and early adopters. So innovators and early adopters would always gain from the change that they can lead. So with the change, right, there's an opportunity and there's a risk. So people who are agile, people who are able to take bets, they're able to truly leverage the transformational power of it. In this case, when you're trying to run high performance computing, the way that technology is evolving, it is evolving really fast. The thing is, one is the evolution part, second is the time part. So whenever there's a new generation of a technology that is available, which is typically 15 months to 2 years time frame, it is order of magnitude better. That means for every dollar of compute in 2 years time, it is 5 to 20x better. So imagine if you make a capital investment in setting the compute infrastructure in your environment. One, to get the compute, like you have a lot of wait time. So once you place an order, you get compute in like 8 weeks, 16 weeks. You get it, then you have to install it, and then you have to make it production ready for your domain experts to use. So you end up losing a lot more time. So there's a lot of efficiency that you need to even get started to run your production, and that is when scientists do not want that wait time. The other aspect is that if you want to carry out an experiment, so if you have say $50,000 to carry out an experiment, right? You cannot buy the computer, set up the computer and $50,000 to carry out an experiment, but you can do that on cloud. So it's like you have something to run with for every dollar that you have. So in this case, the very first time that the way technology is evolving with the advent of AI, the amount of compute that is available at the price that is it is available and in the shortest possible time that is available. It has never happened in, at least this is not something that I've seen in my career, that everything was so accessible in such a shortest possible time for the least amount of dollars that you can pay across the world. And it's just not a US phenomenon, right? You can run on AWS, GCP, Azure, even if you're in the remotest of the country, you just need internet in place. So the innovation, there's a distribution of innovation that has happened. So everyone who has a little bit of money can get started. Once you have results, there are enough people to back you with money. So there's enough money in the market to back you if you have some positive results. So there's money, the compute is available, it's global, internet connectivity is there. So all the things are available. And I've not seen at any other point in the history when everything was readily available. And nothing is a blocker at this point of time. So I don't know, like, why people would not take the right decisions. I'm not saying that everyone should move to cloud. If you can build this on premises, there's a cost that you can save on, which is you doing it, but you need the skills. So you have to have the right people and you have to have the capital, the capability to spend those capital. And then the third aspect is once you spend that capital, are you able to get every penny out of the investment that you have made? So if you have all these three combinations in place, go ahead and build on premise. But if you don't, which is in most cases, I would say 95% companies and more would not have this capability in-house to do it. For them, there's only one obvious choice, which is to run it on any of the hyperscalers.
Sounds good. Thank you. I mean, I also recognize the fact that there's going to be like only one single kind of answer for these questions, but I appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Awesome. Um, I do have one more question, which is what's next for Forvus?
Mhm. So we have been very lucky in the sense that our customers are really happy and paying for everything that we're doing. So we are a venture funded startup and we're growing really well. So I think the next step for us would be possibly we would go ahead with Series A next year. And the only reason that we'll go for Series A at this stage, we are cash flow positive, still we'll go for Series A, is to scale this up big time. And by that time, we want to get as many customers in place.
Awesome. That's great. And I want to thank you very much, Sunny, for this presentation and for allowing us to learn more about supercharging drug discovery. So, with that being said, thank you all very much for attending this event. Um, I will connect you all to the recording of this event soon enough. I'm also going to make sure that you all get updated with, what's happening in 2026. So with that, thank you all very much. Have a great night. If you don't see or hear from me, have a happy holiday and I wish you well. See you all later and have a great start to 2026.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thanks,
AJ.
everyone.
And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if there's something more that you need. It'll be pretty easy to find my name there.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Take care.